For reference to this video content, viewers can at any time visit the Facebook page for more information about Donald's story and what has been highlighted on the Facebook page as part of his fight against the prison system. On his Facebook page, just look out for the guides button at the top of the group. There you will find the album of the media mentioned in the video. The name of the group is called Free Don and Justice. I'm sure some of our viewers will have heard about the story of Donald, who was taken from his home in South Yorkshire January 2023 by armed police and has been locked up in Scotland ever since. Today we have a selection of family, friends and members of the public to discuss Donald's case and the alleged corruption within the judiciary and prison service, allegations for no process of law, fraud, torture and an endless list of violations. Michelle, I can call you Michelle, can I? Tell me about Donald.
Well, first of all, he's been locked up in Scotland on this fraudulent paperwork since January 2023. He's never had any previous convictions, no issues with the authority. He's a very well-educated man, doesn't swear, polite, humble, fun, and a firm believer that at the moment we're in a spiritual war. He believes that we're in the end times, and at the moment we're having a battle of good against evil. And he stands as a living man under trust law, which is God's law. He's fully expressed his status as a living man to the Crown Corporation before he was kidnapped back in January 2023, and they've been unable to process him. Having to produce fraudulent documentation due to the fact that he'd expressed himself as the beneficiary. They've used fraudulent paperwork so as not to breach trust law, and what they've decided to do over the duration of this 2.5 years is to torture him into consent to perform as a legal entity, which of course he isn't. And, should he do so, unfortunately, what that would do it would breathe life into the fraudulent and trumped up claims, which Donald would never do because, as I explained, he's a man of principle and integrity, and that's how he sees it.
So what has happened and where is he now?
Well, at the moment he's currently in HMP Grampian, which is one of the furthest prisons in Scotland. He's been there since January 2020, since January 2025. And there, since he's been there, he's been subjected to all manner of torture and abuse, bullying by guards, inmates, all sorts of things. Most people are under 30. And even by the inmate standards, HMP Grampian is what they call the hard arm of the Scottish Prison Service. So it's somewhere that they tend to put people that they classify as troublemakers in the system. But of course, Donald, trying to put a round peg into a square hole, he's never had any criminal background. So the reason for putting him up there is basically to try and force him into a situation where he's going to contract to the Crown Corporation, which is the whole point of why they did what they did in the first place.
Why doesn't he use a surname?
A surname is a Crown-created commercial artificial person. Okay, the administrative courts need consent to contract you, God's creation, the living man or woman, to consent to be that by utilising that name. This is done unwittingly through deceit. Okay, they haven't attained this consent, hence the current status quo with Donald and why he's been tortured and persecuted for so long within the Scottish Prison Service establishment. Basically is being tortured to break his spirit for commercial reasons, for not contracting to be the legal entity, the surety name, which is Satan's system of adversarial feudal control of God's people by consenting to be a ward of court and consenting to Satan. This is how Donald sees it. Okay, so in a nutshell, they need that name. And Donald isn't that name. He's an express beneficiary under his, under the Creator, the living man.
Why did this happen?
Well, basically, it was to do really for commercial reasons, not justice, corruption. All administrative courts, commercial entities with the principal aim to generate revenue. Justice is a byproduct, not the reason. There's no difference between criminal and civil in this respect. So due to a matrimonial dispute over a house sale up in Scotland, they decided to push forward by jointering two courts, one in Scotland and one in England, one a criminal and one a civil court running at the same time on the same date, due to contacts that the ex-wife had in relation to that. So there's no jurisdictions, I think a lot of people don't realise, between, between commercial entities. A lot of people think just because, the civil claim, the matrimonial claim was down south, they seem to think that how can that cross over into the jurisdiction of Scotland, but actually they're all just commercial entities, shop fronts. So there is actually no, there's no jurisdiction between commercial entities. It's two businesses dealing with each other, basically, one to the other. So the ex-spouse had the motive to benefit from all the material assets in relation to a divorce. That was the motivation. And she wanted to asset strip, or they wanted to asset strip through backdoor enforcement of civil debt, which would be a mutual benefit to all. Okay, so it was an asset strip to smear the legal entity, the commercial name, by putting a newspaper article out to cover up what they were actually doing, when in actual fact it was about, number one, the fact that he wasn't joindering and contracting with the court. So number one, it was a punishment, and two, it was to be able to enforce it through backdoor enforcement, because they couldn't do what you call bankruptcy or proceeds of crime due to the fact that he'd not contracted in any way, shape or form to the courts.
We could talk about the denial of due process in the manner in which they conduct their affairs in our courts, and the fact that he wasn't even produced properly at the court. He was speaking from the public gallery and then taken out of the public gallery and taken back to jail.
Yeah, so what happened was he was kidnapped in January, taken straight up to Scotland, directly to a sheriff court. So there was no interaction with the police. Well, there was interaction with the police. He was actually beaten in by South Yorkshire Police in Doncaster. But what they didn't do was they didn't take photographs, they didn't take fingerprints, nothing like that. And then he was basically put into the back of a custody wagon and taken straight up to a Kirkcaldy Sheriff Court, and then sentenced to a lie-down, what you call a 7-day lie-down, through a cell door. But there was no process of identity or anything like that at the Sheriff Court. He was then informed a short while later that he was fully committed. Now, to be fully committed, that means he's been put onto remand. Now, there has to be court appearances with due process of law for anybody being put on remand. Donald never saw anybody at all, you know what I mean? There was no process, there was no due process. All the other inmates, any third-party scrutiny body that's been looking at this, have said that it is impossible to be put on remand without a court appearance first. And anybody that's had a background, with that will clarify that. And basically, he was then served with a fraudulent indictment, which had never been served in the first place, and told that he was to appear at a first diet, which was in February, which they never even took him to. So he was being held in the prison, and they never actually took him to a first hearing and then put a plea in for him. So it was basically a closed court, right from the very start, and then told that there was going to be a full-on trial 3 months later. Now, when it came to this trial, Donald was basically locked down in a cell underneath the actual courtroom, and the only time he was ever brought up was for the judge to ask the commercial name. And when they realised that he wasn't going to acquiesce to the court, he was then taken straight back down again to the cell underneath the court and basically locked down there. So he had no idea of any of the charges against him, any of the evidence that was being produced, nothing, zero. They were just basically marching on basically against a bit of paper. with absolutely no interaction from the living man. And they absolutely need that interaction to be able to get that, that jurisdiction.
It was a total ritualistic, theatrical event.
Well, it flies in the face of Article 29 of the Magna Carta as well, doesn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, no man should be seized, distressed, or ruined in any way without first having the right to defend himself at a fair trial.
And it also does state on police documents what go into that court, that if no fingerprints are present, then they cannot positively identify the subject of their inquiry. And then they have to confirm that with the subject, so there were no fingerprints whatsoever for him present, which they could not have identified him properly. So that's why, another reason why I've gone through this process with him. It's just like they've moved forward. Yeah. But I've been in similar circumstances where they've done it, so we know what it's about, do you know what I mean? They've took me into a closed private court on a Saturday, when courts are not open, with Amy van, with everything pre-organised and everything pre-set up, and then even all the police reports, all the statements, everything had been completely fabricated by South Yorkshire Police for this case to try and send me to prison, and it all come out and then it didn't go their way, but like I say, Donald's an old man, he's a 63-year-old man, they've just gone ahead, they've kidnapped him, and there's 2.5 years of just daily torture and abuse, psychological, physical. I mean, the things they're doing to him, it's just unbelievable. The guards are orchestrating attacks on him in yard, so then he's getting attacked by prisoners in yard. The officers are then putting him on a Rule 43, which is for vulnerable prisoners, to try and section him off, as though he's consented to that himself. And then putting him on wing with all sex offenders and everything. And then when they couldn't contract with that, they tried moving him again. Then they tried putting his name on cell doors down in segregation, making it out he's in there when he's on a different part at wing. And just, it's like they're building a fictitious, fabricated story against him, which I've seen it all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, what he's relating to then, special security measures. So basically, special security measures are for people that are extremely, extremely dangerous. Many inmates will say that they've never been on special security measures, even if they've, done absolutely, incredibly violent things. It's very, very rare that anybody will be put on that because of the due process that's involved in that. It's something that has to go to, to politicians at a higher level to basically authenticate it. So Donald has been told that he's on special security measures indefinitely. Now, all the other inmates will say, well, that's ridiculous, because these special security measures, even if they were in place, would only last for a couple of days. So we know that it's a sham, but the reason that they've been doing these special security measures at Grampian is basically to isolate him off, so that he's not able to, to communicate with other people. And that allows them to be a lot more punitive in what they're doing and hide behind these special security measures. But we know that they're not able to do what they want to do, because, like he said, what they're doing is they have to go into segregation when they're on special security measures. They call it the digger. Now, we found out through other inmates that they'd got the commercial name outside the digger in a different area of the prison, whereas what they were doing with Donald was they were locking him up under solitary conditions, but they weren't able to do it downstairs officially. And that's because they shouldn't have him there. And they know they shouldn't have him there because they haven't got the authentication or the ratification. There's no contract to the terms and conditions of the prison. Because unbeknown to everybody is, all you're doing when you're going through the processes within these establishments, it doesn't matter whether it's a prison, a school, you're consenting to the terms and conditions of the contract. And there is no contract with Donald, and this is why they're having to do what they're having to do. Yeah, it's causing a big hoo-ha, shall we say, all over really.
Well, that's it. And look at now, it's left them in a predicament where they've only got two things they can really do, because there's no way they're going to get that contract out of him or consent from him. So they've only got two options, and that's to kill him or let him out. And they've expressed on many a times that they've been given the go-ahead to actually kill him. They've even told him that we can do what we want. The governor's told us now we can get away with murder, we can do what we want to him. They've beat him, they've told him they want to break his wrists and hands so he stops writing to the governor. And these things are happening on a daily basis with him.
And what's clear, it's really
when you
interesting.
see him, like you say, you're hearing it now, but he's a 63-year-old man. And when you get the other parts of this and you actually see photos of him and hear him, then you'll realise what these parasites are,
I mean, what they're doing is that they're actually employing in these places thugs. That's actually what they are, thugs. And they're hiding behind a uniform. I mean, Donald, honestly, he never swears. He treats, even though they're abusive, vulgar, let's call them what they are, obnoxious, okay? He always still speaks to them with respect. And quite honestly, they've come out with statements like, we can literally get away with murder here. And they're actually dropping it out.
This is what they're doing.
They've been given a passport. They feel they're that arrogant and confident, and this is what people need to know, the way that they're acting. They actually think that they've got a licence to kill and that nobody's going to say a dicky bird about it. But this time it's sort of like they haven't got what they need, because they're liable, fully liable for what they're doing.
And it's like you say now, to enact what they're doing to him, they're having to set special teams on him now, because any guards that see through the the bullshit, what's coming out of their mouths, anyone who gets close to Donald and can see where he is, they're immediately moved, they're gone. Guards, inmates, anything, they're all moved away from him. Then a set of guards will come in who've then been put there specially to terrorise him, hurt him, kick him, just daily, constant, every single day psychological and mental abuse with him. And this is every day. And what you find is them ones, and you can research it, or you can go on internet if you can read, you go on it, start researching all to do with SPS and the governors and everything like that. Anybody who's come in contact with him that's carried it on, they've all been promoted, they've all been given gifts for what they've done to him. It's like the last governor at Grampian, Brian McCurdy, dodgy, up to shady things, got businesses, it's all on Company's House, you can research him, dodgy businesses where money's been put through and stuff. So as soon as that stuff's been found out about him, they've moved him straight to Perth, where Donald were at first, and they've now made him governor at Perth. They've just, you can see it, they've just moved everybody about, promoted him. Andrew Hodge, who started it all, who was the governor at Perth, he's now in SPS headquarters, and he's the director and head of operations. So it's him now who had the first contact with Donald, who's orchestrating all this on him now.
Okay, yeah, that's
it's all there. You can research it, all the dates. You can see the dates from when he was moved from Perth to Kilmarnock to Greenock to Grampian. They've done it in every city. He's been moved about 5 times, hasn't he, from prison to prison.
Yeah, and can I just add into that, because that's a really interesting point. I mean, first of all, for your viewers, there is a lot more information out there on the intricacies of the no due course of law in relation to this kangaroo court. From the time he was kidnapped, and there will be the information at the end to have a look at that. But anybody, if you think about it, okay, what it is that they were purporting that the legal entity did, okay, why would he be in a high security prison? Number one, you know what I mean? It's a white collar crime, He's in there on the worst wing in the hardest prison in Scotland, the furthest away from where his family and friends are.
They labelled him at one point the most dangerousest man in Scotland.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. I mean, quite honestly, it's almost laughable. It's been absolutely barbaric. He's been labelled as a gang leader, the most dangerous man in Scotland, a gang leader.
And what these parasites don't realise either, they've done all this. I'm going to say it because it's all been orchestrated through Freemasonry and everything. They know exactly what they've been up to. Yeah, so if they'd have not done all this in first place, hundreds of people now wouldn't have had to research and look into what they're doing. He hasn't exposed anything. It's you lot that's exposed it. You've exposed yourselves. And now the writing's on the wall. We can see you and we can see everything you're doing.
Yeah, so let us just tell them we know how it worked. So when Donald was taken, he was taken directly to HMP Perth. Now, when he was at HMP Perth, he was treated, appallingly to a point, but he was seeing a governor, and a lot of people will remember this. He was seeing a governor once a week, and this governor was monitoring his psychological progress, because he was given a job to do. How was he coping? This, that, and the other, because it was all about getting him to consent. So he was seeing him every week. So that the whole period of HMP Perth was about appeasement. It was about appeasing him and coercing him into contracting and giving the Crown Corporation what it was that he needed. But when that didn't work, what they did was they gave him a good beating. That again, when he's had a beating, he's had about 6 assaults. One by South Yorkshire Police before he left. One upon leaving HMP Perth, which is what I'm just talking about here. And he was taken from HMP Perth to HMP Greenock. Now, Greenock is the most disgusting prison in the whole of the Scottish Prison Service estate. It's basically, by their own admission, a prison that needs bulldozing. It's dilapidated, there's sewerage coming up through the sinks, it's a hovel. And they thought, right, okay, we didn't get what we wanted at Perth, so we'll try this. Having living like a rat in a bloody rat hole, quite honestly. So they treated him terribly, and a lot of people were privy to what he did there. He was starved, wasn't he?
Starved him, then they've turned eating up to try and flush in his cell, eating up full blast so he can't breathe. Everything, it's the amount of the tactics they've tried.
So we tried that, and then what they did, didn't they? They moved him to HMP Kilmarnock. Now, HMP Kilmarnock was another stage of their operation. The reason they moved him to HMP Kilmarnock was because it was a biometric system. Yeah. And if they could have got him to contract that biometric system, that would have given them again everything that they wanted. So again, that failed because all the can you remember all the prisons?
They had to assault him, didn't they? Tied him to a wheelchair and dragged him into a room, took his photo, threatened to break his arms, bending his wrists up his back if he didn't consent or contract. And then a couple of days later they moved him again because they didn't get what they want.
So then they moved him back to Greenock again because nobody else would have him. And when it still failed at Greenock, they moved him up to Grampian now, and then we've had how many assaults?
What do they say every time they're assaulted him? More restraint. They call it restraint when he's in a wheelchair with his arms up his back and they're smashing his head into tables and stuff. And they call it more restraint. He needs restraining.
And what's become more apparent is that the draconian measures are getting more shocking, and the torturous techniques and the desperation that's becoming apparent to get these contracts, and the communication's never really been blocked from families and friends. So families and friends have been subjected to hearing this torture and the effect that it's had on Donald directly in real time. And what's really apparent is that he's never had access to any medical officers. There seems to be shadow guards that are doing these atrocious acts and denying Donald, because he's not contracted, to the medical teams. So as far as we're aware, he's never had any medical intervention, and he's had a lot of a serious impact on his body, on his living body. And the courageousness of this man is just phenomenal, and this is the faith that he's had, his beliefs, and this is, we need to know, as living people who we are, as living, live, breathing men and women who have never, contracted to. Let's face it, the prisoners are considered as business products. They're not even on their special measures policies. They're actually identified as business products. So it's all commercial and it's all cooperation and contracts and dodgy dealings. And we're just, being used, really. It's just complete usury for their own gains. And this is public money as well, in my opinion. Public money that we think there's a judiciary there, and judiciary is being enforced covertly when there's no contract outside. And Donald, because he knows who he is, and his courage and his faith, it's strengthened, and the system, you've got two systems going on, and never the twain meets. But it just begs belief, the measures, the strength have gone, how far they've gone to covert and fraudulently hide data and deny his even presence, that he's actually in these establishments. Yeah. It's shocking, shocking.
I think the other thing is as well is their system. They've got all sorts of, erroneous things on the system. They're trying to create an illusion, on paper, which isn't the reality. We found out all sorts of things. So, for example, we know who Donald is. Is a Christian, a born-again Christian, okay? But they've got him down as an atheist. It came out that they'd got him down as a homosexual, and then guards were going around
inmates telling all homosexual, he likes young boys, and they're just constantly putting his life in danger.
And this is what they're doing. They're trying to set up a life-threatening situation, and this has been, we've been saying this over and over again. So there's all sorts of things down. They're saying that he's got a job in the kitchen, but he's not going to the kitchen. There's nothing. They've got nothing to substantiate it, because anybody that has a job in a kitchen or in a prison, it's another contract. You're contracting to their terms and services again, terms and conditions of contract. So there's a contract that you have to sign to do anything there under their liability. Well, Donald hasn't done any of it yet. They're putting it down on the system. I mean, who are they trying to kid here? And can't the people realise that this is supposed to be a public service? It's a purported public service. Come on, it's they're getting away with it because people, people's ignorance a lot of the time, quite frankly. I don't know.
But this is why they are getting away with it, because they've intertwined their corrupt, parasitic little world into them systems. That's what they've done.
Well,
they all benefit
legal
off
should
of
only
it.
apply to corporations, shouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
The law applies to a living man and woman.
Yeah.
So they've made merchandise of us, effectively.
Yes.
And in order to deny you the rights that a company being born a living man or woman.
Yeah.
Try to justify their actions by making up stories and fictitious.
Denial of due process, procedural impropriety after procedural impropriety. Because they cannot see the living man or woman. Because they have no authority over the living man or woman.
Absolutely.
The fact is they've caused harm and injury to this man.
And that's an interesting point as well, because this is why I say there's a lot of people and there's a lot of stuff going off. We know where we are, we're in end times and it's coming. I don't care what anybody says. And you look at the stuff of people who's coming out now, like you mentioned earlier, Lucy Connolly and Tommy Robinson and all that. What people don't understand is they're joined to the system. They're in the system, they're still going to court, they're still doing the same stuff, This is why they've got all the media coverage, this is why they've got all that, do you know what I mean? Where Donald's a living man, he's coming out of that. You cannot have, when this end comes, 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and these who are still trying to play with the system, thinking they're getting little bits from it, but I'm doing this work, you're going to get spewed out of his mouth, let me tell you.
Yeah, and I'd like to just to add into what he's saying there. Okay, when Donald decided to take himself out of the system because it was for it wasn't not for anything to do with financial gain. It wasn't about that. It was basically because it was the right thing to do. Because once you know. And that veil has been lifted. To us, that would be going against our Creator.
You can never unsee it. Once that veil's been lifted, you can never unsee it. And then if you then choose to close a blind eye. You can't, because then you're going back into Satan's world. Once that veil's been lifted, you've been shown the frauds and everything they've committed. Only the ones with eyes to see will see, and ears to hear will hear. And unfortunately, we've all got eyes to see and ears to hear.
And Donald, that's how he feels. He puts these people on notice every day. Is so valiant in the way that he's approached this. He's never stood back. He's never, shrunk back at any point. He tells them how it is and what they've done. And
mens rea. He reminds them every day.
They say the pen's mightier than the sword, but it's like you say, everything that's been done properly, they've just gone against it all. There's no, and anybody like you think there's due process, and once you become and you express who you are, you become a living man, there is no remedy in this system for you. It wants you dead, and that's it. If they can't drag you back in, they'd rather just kill you and wipe you out. That's the way this system works.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think people need to realise that everything, like it was just said there, this paper runs on form. It's dead. Okay, everything's about paper. Everything, the shuffling bits of paper around, whatever it is,
Members of staff, whenever we've challenged them, challenged the manner in which they've conducted themselves, they move a governor to a different prison.
They either retire, I've had judges retire, I've had
to avoid accountability.
Crime commissioners retire, they've all been put on notice. They either all retire or they get promoted, and then they do something bad again to get promoted for.
Time a general prisoner goes against the rules that's in the jurisdiction of consented, they're going into the estate, aren't they, for every contract.
Well, they've even, like you say, they broke a prisoner's wrist, didn't they, for speaking to Donald, helping him right, and they ended up with him. Forgot about that. Even someone getting close to him who were helping out, they ended up breaking his wrist and moving him away. So it shows the lengths they'll go to.
So HMP was about appeasement, and then you moved on through the different operational protocol of what they've done to try and break Donald into contract. Now, so in a way, when you think about it, is look at the lengths that they've had to go to. Yes, Donald's being tortured. Yes, he's been assaulted, but they've not done that because they really wanted to do it. If they'd got everything that they wanted from Donald, I believe strongly that he would have been in an open prison. They would have had him out on a tag, making plenty of money from it all the way along the line, of course, but that couldn't happen. So what they've done is they've tried to, put the boot on the top of the head, and and it's you will yield. But when you've got God's Spirit in you, we hear all about these fairy stories and biblical stories. They're there for a reason. They are truisms, and we do believe, everybody that's been a part of this, that we've been seeing almost like a biblical story in motion, haven't we? I don't think we can all agree on that, the spirituality of it.
Like I was trying to say before, even under their own warped logic, they don't even apply the rules properly.
No.
There's no rules, there's no law. It's just, we're here, we're the gangsters, and we'll do what we like.
Well, so that's where it's got. It is, and it's been witnessed many a times now.
So what mechanism do we have to actually hold these people to account? I mean, we've tried just about everything.
Well, this is why Judgment Day is coming very soon, and they're all going to be held to account very, very soon. Very soon.
So yeah, there's the assaults. So he had the one at South Yorkshire Police was the first one. He had one at Perth before he left for Greenock, and then at Kilmarnock they nearly killed him there. There's media out on that for any of the viewers that would like to see that. And then they moved him to Grampian. It's been appalling for him there. And then obviously we've had the three.
Well, you can just research with Grampian, like we said, how they're moving him away and how they promote him and stuff. Like Hodge, they promoted him from Perth to Director at Headquarters of Head of Operations. They then moved Brian McCurdy, who was the governor at Grampian, to HMP Perth. Then Martin Milner was the deputy governor, and his sidekick with Stuart Campbell, who was the hall manager, who were absolutely terrorising Donald. They've now promoted them two, so now you've got Martin Milner as governor and Stuart Campbell as deputy governor. You just can't make this shit up, but it shows they've got to keep these corrupt ones in to keep it tied.
Yeah, so we were
But
going to talk.
unfortunately, they're taking the little bribe, aren't they? They don't realise what's coming.
Yeah.
No, just to go back to Freemasonry, I mean, just to connect one of the many dots, for those of you that don't believe in Freemasonry and how corrupt it truly is, just to give you a little taster, there were 3 attempted murders in 3 weeks. I mean, you know how these Freemasons work. They work through numerology. And another pointer which was also interesting, the third attempted murder on the 3rd week, on the 6th of June, is 666. The most important part of that, I personally think anyway, after listening to the phone call, is the fact that you've got these prison guards, bearing in mind you've got 8 to 10 prison guards and a 63-year-old man being dragged across concrete floor. They've taken his shoes off. It was all premeditated, no doubt. And as they're dragging his beneficiary body across this concrete floor, you've got officers going to Donald and saying, if you consent, walk with us. That should just tell you everything you need to know, really. He hasn't contracted with them whatsoever, and it's so easy to contract with these people. It's as easy as just taking a step and walking with them. That is consent. And I think most of us just have no idea how easy it is to contract with these criminals.
Yeah, because that's what you call consent by action. You know, so even going to the courts, that you're consenting through action.
Even that's laughable though, because you can't consent without full disclosure.
Just full disclosure, otherwise it's an
So
abuse of
it's
process.
complete fraud.
Oh
Yeah.
no, yeah. But the point being
But
is
they
that's
know,
what they're
they know
trying.
once the ones come up against them who know the fraud, they're in the light then. They don't want no to do with it. That's like the previous times I've been in court. Every single time, all they've done, the judges lately, is just got up and run out of back door. And that's what they do. Once they know you know, once they know you tell them who you are. They know them judges. They're up and they're off out that room.
Well, when they dragged Donald to go back to the 6th, to the court across the concrete floors, and you know, he was in such a state that basically, surprise, the court got called off. That's because...
Yeah, and that was the assault where one of the guards were on his back saying, the old bastard, we've killed him, we've done it, we've killed
the old
him.
Bastard's
He's dead, he's dead.
Nurse. Yeah.
Do you know, laugh for this is the how narcissistic and you know, everything's inverted how they make out. They're making him out to be a criminal, and the acts what they are committing on a daily basis. It's just disgusting. And they go home and drink Horlicks with a wife and like, yeah, look what I bought. They don't realise that they've had to torture a man and make him miserable just to get that little holiday for the wife or that for the kid. You know?
Honestly, listen, I think this is really important, okay? 63-year-old guy, he likes listening to classic FM. You know, he managed to save up for a little hi-fi in the prison. It was put off their list or whatever that they do. Anyway, they've even taken that away from him. So he's in a concrete box, 23 and a half hours. Please envisage that, anybody that's listening. 23 and a half hours in a cell, concrete cell, with windows that you can't open properly, fixed windows, okay? And, you know, he can't even listen to classic FM. He sings hymns on a night and we read psalms to him. They've even resorted to ripping down things, that spiritual things off the walls, shredding them. He can't even receive the letters that people write to him. If it's a postcard, they'll give other inmates them straight from the envelopes, but Donald, they black and white photocopy them so that he can't even have the benefit of feeling the love that another man or woman's given him on that medium of in written form, pictures, paintings, the rest of it. It's evil, isn't it? Quite honestly, it's evil. It's
for anybody who's listening, who's up on law and crimes and stuff like that. This man's in there for a purported 53,000 fraud. Purported 53,000. Yeah, there's kids out there now who are out, and there's not one I spoke to not long ago. I told you, nearly 10 million fraud, and he did 2 years in prison. And he's out now and he's still got all cars he bought with money, all his Rolexes, Cartier watches. You know, and at 2 years he's out driving back with all them watches, everything on his wrist, fucking laughing at system. And you've got that 63-year-old man there on a purported 53 grand, and you wanting to kill him for it. You give him a 4.5 year sentence, 4 years, 6 months.
Fraudulent scheme the trouble they've gone to covert this crime is phenomenal.
It is, and but the blessing is that people are seeing it now, and this is the reason why this selection, and we are only a selection of family, friends, supporters. There's many more out there now looking at this, aware of this, and they're seeing it for what it is.
So this is another reason why they don't want to let him go. Like we said before, they've got two options: let him go or kill him. They won't let him go because they want the contract, so they get paid all this court, everything they've done and made the story up. They need that consent to get paid to fucking rape the trust. Do you know what I mean?
I think also what's interesting to mention as well is, there's trusts and outside bodies are putting agencies on notice, what I would call complicit partner agencies on notice. So that can be, for example, the inspectorates, the prison inspectorates, the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal, there's the police Scotland, they've all been put on notice through different parties over this 2.5 years of imprisonment. But I think what people need to realise that all agencies that are working in and around the Crown Corporation, and in this case obviously it's a Scottish establishment, basically they're all connected, so they're basically just connected, planning strategically to obtain an agenda. The Scottish Government and the executive agencies are just basically a connected big boys club. Let's call it what it is. They're covering each other's backs. They're all complicit. They make you believe that they're there for checks and balances. Let's go to the ombudsman, or let's go and the inspectorate will sort it out. But that's exactly what it is. It's lip service. It's to make the public believe that there's checks and balances, but in actual fact, it's just another part of the racketeering, basically. Let's call it what it is. They're just complicit partner agencies, partners in crime, let's call it.
They're all involved, aren't they? It's like you say, when she was written on NHS, they only want to contract with Donald through NHS to try and bring in mental health. That's all. They've tried that many a times with him, haven't they?
Through the biometrics.
Absolutely wicked.
Do you know when you start and you do this and you start to wake up and you do the process, you see how intertwined they all are. They attack you from every angle. It'll be the courts, your doctors, your dentists, DVLA, and they're just all hammered because they want that contract through that name again. So they'll try from every single angle.
And health professionals as individuals should ask themselves in any occupation, is it moral? Is it ethical? Because that keeps us human. Living man, living woman.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, these entities while working for them now, they're not. They've sold their souls. They're empty vessels. I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing my job. I need to get paid. I've got a mortgage. I've got a car I need to pay for. I've got 3 kids. I've got an holiday a year. I've got 2 bottles of red wine I need to get on a night when I get in from work. I just need to do what I'm told. And this is why this full world's like it is. And this is why it's going to be eradicated soon.
But the entire Crown Corporation is currently accused of domestic terrorism, genocide, murder, child trafficking, all the most horrific crimes you can think of.
It's the same again.
They have no standing. So we're going to these institutions or these establishments expecting rational, moral people to be behind them.
Not. They've already worked it out where they've got all the narcissists.
Anyone who works for a corporation accused of those cannot call themselves moral in any way.
No.
So
what religion you are either, we're all...
They've already, and this is again, like you say, through Freemasonry, they've already intertwined at the top level of all these institutions, the people they need there, the narcissists, the psychopaths, the sociopaths, they're all in place now. That's why nobody will ever get past them.
I think also, when you, all these, this is sort of like snuck in on people. They don't realise through the complacency what's happened. But you'll see every school, every hospital, you have a CEO arm. It's the corporate arm. Any CEO tells you it's corporate. So what is corporate? Corporate's business. It's all to do with contracts. So quite honestly, you've got the NHS, you've got the CEO of the NHS. It's telling you it's about monetary, it's about claims, it's contracts.
Corporation, the corpse.
Yeah, exactly.
They can only speak to the dead.
So people need to understand that this is business. They don't care about you, whether you're hurt, you're bleeding, you're dying, you're diseased, you're this, that and the other.
It's all for your safety.
Yeah. They don't care. They care about the money, and unfortunately Donald has trodden on their toes, and this is why we are where we are with this situation.
And basically that's why we're saying what we're saying. This is all we can really do at the minute, is bring them into light, bring the people who are doing this into light and expose them.
Yeah.
Because we know we're not going to get no remedy in their system until our Father comes and gets rid of them all, which he is doing very soon.
Is there a mechanism under law for a redress under this situation?
Well, given the fact that Donald was taken from Doncaster, we initially completed a habeas corpus and had that filed with the court. We filed it on every prison he's been in, every prison governor has been served, and we filed that with the High Court of Edinburgh. But obviously, given the discrepancies between the two jurisdictions, that's not the right instrument. In Scotland, it's called a petition for liberation, which we've refiled last week. So if our lawful mechanisms to try and resolve this kind of situation don't function, we'll soon know.
Is there a conclusion at the end of all this?
Yeah, I mean, really, just to highlight that the UK judicial system is dishonest. It's dishonest. It's all about deceit. Okay, it's rotten to the core. And this is the sinister and insidious reality, really, that they use false documentation. We've seen that across the board. It's clear. They vanish people. They use trumped-up charges and show trials or kangaroo courts, whatever you want to call it. And this isn't a crime thriller conspiracy theory. It's a reality. And this is what Donald's been involved in. He's in a torture chamber, which is HMP Grampian, an elderly, humble Christian man, beautiful person or beautiful man. Massive amounts of resources and operational management have been utilised to break him. Okay, so I think that's very important. And also that people recognise that this is a political issue. This goes right to the top. They're all aware of it. The First Minister of Scotland, the Minister of Justice. This is they're all aware of who Donald is. So let's be clear here. This is a system gone rogue. It's a reality of how a system tortures those who choose to stand out of the system, quite frankly. It's the experience of one man who's been illegally and unlawfully kidnapped, standing for truth under his Christian values. 30 months of torture. And imagine that, everybody, 30 months sat in a concrete box, okay, 23 and a half hours a day. Intimidation by teams of aggressive, violent guards. They don't come in, they don't speak to him nicely, they come out, everything's adversarial, everything's aggressive, everything's nasty. I think, and that is... it's sickening, really. And this is under the Scottish Prison Service, whose motto is unlocking potential and transforming lives. I think that's important. This is the truth, isn't it? It's lip service, there to deceive the public. So I think it's time that everybody, lifted off the rose-tinted spectacles and smelled the coffee, quite honestly.
Any listeners and viewers want to see for themselves what type of people these people are who are controlling these courts and the judiciary, just go onto Google, look on Wikipedia and research who Alistair Mackenzie Duff is. He's the husband of Susan M. Duff that sentenced Donald to this sentence. Just go on Wikipedia and have a look for yourselves and make your own decision up. That's all I've got to say.
Is there a way that people can support you? And if so, what can they do?
People can do any of the following, whether that be leaving a paper trail of complaints on the Scottish Prison Service website. Anyone can write a letter to Donald or leave a heartfelt voice message that we will forward to Donald, or even making phone calls to the Scottish Prison Service or HMP Grampian. However, if you can do any of these, we would advise that you email godschildren144 at Proton Mail, and one of our trustees will get in touch with you about the details of it.
Michelle, can you give us a conclusion to the matters raised?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to say really, we are living in very special times at the moment, where we're in a battle of good against evil, and I think everybody needs to wake up to this spiritual warfare. It is good against evil. Yes, it is black and white. I'm sorry, it's black and white, and we have to choose a path, and hopefully people will choose that right path. And sometimes it's not the convenient path, but we do have to stand up and have the courage of our conviction.
We spoke about this earlier as well, how people were saying how Donald's a political prisoner. You know, I think he's actually a prisoner of war, because this is a spiritual war what we're going through, and they know that. He's wanting to save his soul, and they want to take his soul away from him, and it's not happening. You know, so it's a prisoner of war. And same as they did in Germany and stuff like that, same as being in them concentration camps, they are mentally, physically torturing that man on a daily basis to break his mind, break his spirit, and eventually take his soul, which is not going to happen.
If anyone would like to see and hear some of the information discussed in this video, they can get in touch with one of the support groups in Donald's case at Free Don and Justice. Links will be in the description below this video. Or alternatively, email them direct at godschildren144 at protonmail.com for the links.